At the highest crest of the Five Mists Mountains, where clouds often served as the floor and the sky was the roof, stood the Misty Peak sect. This sect was known not for its mercy, but for its harsh discipline and its unwavering focus on cultivating pure chai, the internal energy that was the very foundation of immortality. Lin Tao was a disciple there, yet his existence felt like a small blemish upon the perfect jade tapestry of the sect. His qi, which should have flowed like a mighty river, only dripped like frozen dew, weak, fragile, and cold at his fingertips. From a young age, he had spent more time in the meditation halls than his peers, but the results remained null, as if destiny refused to allow him strength. Other disciples measured their progress by the brilliance of the light on the testing stone. Lin Tao's light was always dim, barely visible, making mockery an everyday whisper. Grandmaster Heng, the sect leader, a man with a beard as white as snow and qi as fierce as a storm, viewed Lin Tao with unconcealed disappointment. "Cultivation is about will, not sorrow," Grandmaster Heng declared, his voice echoing like thunder in the training hall. Lin Tao, who had struggled to hold back tears, swallowed his grief. It was not the physical pain, but the relentless ache of failure. On the day of the autumn purity trial, Lin Tao's failure reached its peak. Before the hundreds of watching eyes, the testing stone beneath his palm remained dark. While his fellow disciples radiated auras of blue and green, Lin Tao's qi produced only a small tremor that died almost instantly. Grandmaster Heng sighed heavily. "Lin Tao, you have no place on the Misty Peak. Your weakness is poison to the sect's spirit." The decision was final. Expulsion. Lin Tao was given one day to pack his few belongings and leave the peak he had once called home. That night, amidst the cold mist, Lin Tao felt no anger. He only felt profound, unbearable sadness. He left the sect not with fighting spirit, but with flowing tears, each drop feeling like it was washing away a failed promise. Lin Tao descended the mountain towards the Shadow Valley, a place considered dangerous, inhabited by wild spirits, a refuge for those who had failed the path to immortality. For weeks he survived on wild berries and rainwater, using his very basic martial skills to avoid danger. His mind was filled with Grandmaster Heng's voice, claiming true cultivation demanded a heart free of emotion, an empty vessel ready to receive cosmic energy. Yet for Lin Tao, emotion was everything. His grief was the only thing that felt real and strong within him. One afternoon, sheltering from a thunderous storm, he discovered a hidden cave, shielded by the roots of a giant tree that resembled a dragon's claw. Inside the cave, the air was dry and warm. On one wall, there was an ancient carving, almost erased by time. The carving depicted a figure weeping, but from the pools of their tears flowed a river of glowing golden qi. Beneath the carving, a brittle animal skin scroll was tucked away, inscribed with extremely ancient characters. The scroll was titled, "The Silent Path, Alchemy of the Immortal's Tears," a forbidden cultivation manual lost for millennia. Lin Tao read it with a pounding heart. The manual stated that pure qi was not emotionless, but rather emotion that had been sublimated. His greatest flaw, his profound sadness, was his strongest vessel. Tears were the key to transmutation, converting grief qi into azure purity qi. This was a perilous path, for if the grief qi was not processed correctly, it could corrupt the soul and turn him into a vengeful spirit. But Lin Tao had no choice. He had already lost everything. If death awaited him, at least he would die on his own chosen path. He began to meditate, not by attempting to empty his mind, but by summoning all the sorrow he had ever felt, the shame, the rejection, and the deep sense of loss. The energy of grief felt cold and bitter, filling his meridians with a searing pain, far worse than the chill of the Five Mists Mountains. Carefully, Lin Tao directed that bitter energy toward his dantian, his energy center, and tried to force it to spin. The process felt incredibly slow, like trying to turn a giant millstone with only his fingertips. He failed repeatedly, and each failure made him vomit blood. Yet every time he failed, he wept, and every tear that hit the ground felt like releasing a fraction of the burden. One night, after meditating nonstop for 3 days, he felt a subtle shift. The cold grief chi in his dantian was no longer bitter. It felt calm, silent, like the surface of a midnight lake. This was the first step of the alchemy, accepting the sadness completely, not fighting it, but allowing it to become a stable foundation. Months passed in that isolated cave. Lin Tao was no longer hunting for power. He was hunting for emotional truth. He realized Grandmaster Heng was wrong. Qi was not an empty vessel. Qi was a reflection of the inner self, and his inner self was filled with a sea of sorrow he now learned to navigate. When he finally succeeded in spinning the grief chi, a rumbling sound was heard, not outside but deep within him. The bitter energy began to change color. From dark gray, it shifted to deep blue, then to a clear azure that radiated a gentle light. It was azure purity chi, energy that was pure and powerful, formed from the transmutation of grief that had been fully accepted and honored. The resulting power was not aggressive like the sect had taught, but defensive and calming, capable of healing and cleansing. Lin Tao emerged from the cave, no longer an expelled disciple, but a cultivator who had truly achieved his own inner enlightenment. He chose to return, not for revenge, but because he sensed an unstable chi resonance emanating from the Five Mists Mountains. As he ascended, he found the villages on the mountain slopes attacked by rampaging beasts, their energy feeling alien and malevolent. These monsters were shadow hounds, creatures whose energy had been contaminated by the black chai excessively released by greedy cultivators. Lin Tao realized that the Misty Peak sect, in their pursuit of unlimited power, had disturbed the cosmic balance. He arrived at the sect's gates and found all the disciples and Grandmaster Heng struggling against waves of shadow hounds. Their pure chi, though strong, could only kill the monsters, not cleanse the source of contamination. Grandmaster Heng, exhausted, saw Lin Tao. "Why have you returned, failure? Leave, or you will die in vain." Lin Tao did not reply. He simply stood between Grandmaster Heng and the charging horde of shadow hounds. He raised both his palms. There was no flash of fire or lightning, only a pale blue light flowing from his dantian. This was his first demonstration of the alchemy of tears. He released the azure purity chai into the air, not as a weapon, but as a vast wave of gentleness. When the blue wave touched the shadow hounds, the monsters did not explode or shatter. Instead, the black chai possessing them seemed to separate, and the creatures convulsed, then dropped to the ground as regular wolves and jackals. They had been cleansed, not slain. The effect was immediate and astonishing. Grandmaster Heng stared in disbelief. "What energy is this, so gentle yet so strong?" "It is the energy that accepts, Master," Lin Tao replied, his voice calm. "A power born from the acceptance of sorrow, not its rejection." Lin Tao then turned and faced the source of the problem, a dark rift in the cliff face behind the sect, from which the black chai continuously flowed. The rift was the result of overly ambitious cultivation experiments by Grandmaster Heng attempting to harvest forbidden energy. Lin Tao walked toward the rift. The black chi pouring out felt like a cold grip trying to tear his soul apart. This was his final trial, confronting the source of evil energy with the purest strength of emotion. He once again summoned all the sadness he had transmuted, remembering every night in the Shadow Valley, every tear of despair. This time, the tears did not flow. They seemed to vaporize within his eyes, becoming a spiritual mist he directed into his hands. Lin Tao touched the dark rift. The pain was immense, as if he were embracing the darkness itself. The azure purity chi began to flow from his hands into the rift, meeting the black chi in a silent but intense battle. The fight was not about who was stronger, but about who was purer in essence. The black chi screamed in Lin Tao's mind, trying to poison and twist his sorrow into uncontrollable rage. "You are weak! You should be angry! Avenge yourself!" the voice of darkness whispered. Lin Tao refused, not with force, but with surrender. "I accept my sorrow, and within it I find silence." Slowly but surely, Lin Tao's azure purity chi began to cleanse the black chi. It did not destroy the darkness, it purified it, transforming the dangerous raw energy into a neutral cosmic mist. The dark rift began to shrink, then closed with a soft, hissing sound. The source of contamination was gone. Lin Tao collapsed, utterly exhausted, yet a faint smile touched his lips. He had used up all the chi in his dantian. Grandmaster Heng rushed forward, no longer with arrogance, but with deep respect and regret. "Lin Tao, you saved us. What is this power? How did you achieve such purity?" Lin Tao pointed to his eyes, which now glowed with a soft azure light, tear-free yet full of emotional depth. "I did not reject pain. I used it as fuel. Tears are alchemy, master. They transmute sorrow into strength." Grandmaster Heng realized his fatal error. He had taught the cultivation of power, while Lin Tao had discovered the cultivation of the soul. Lin Tao remained at the sect, but no longer as a disciple. He became the keeper of the library, the most revered cultivation expert. He never again used his azure purity chi to attack, only to heal and calm. Other disciples began visiting him, not seeking the secret of strength, but seeking the secret of inner peace. Lin Tao taught them that the path to immortality was not hoarding cosmic energy, but cleansing the inner vessel. "No pain is wasted," he often said. "Every sorrow you accept is a brick on the path to azure purity." Years passed. Grandmaster Heng passed away, and Lin Tao was offered the position of sect leader, but he gently declined. He did not seek worldly power. He had found a greater power, the power to be fully and unashamedly himself. One quiet morning, Lin Tao sat on the edge of the cliff, the very place from which he had once been expelled. This time, he was alone, but not lonely. He felt the chi around him, in the air, in the stones, and within himself, all flowing as one unified whole. He had reached the stage of immortality, not by soaring into the sky in a blast of light, but by merging with the earth in stillness. His azure purity energy had enveloped the 5 Mists Mountains, cleansing the dark chi that once contaminated it. The Misty Peak sect was no longer known for its harsh discipline, but for the peacefulness and clarity of its disciples' chi. Lin Tao's wisdom was the lesson. The greatest strength is born not from cruelty, but from patiently cultivated vulnerability. He had changed the meaning of cultivation, from a pursuit of power to a journey toward inner authenticity. Lin Tao rose, not stronger in the physical sense, but boundless in the spiritual sense. He walked away from the precipice, leaving behind faint blue footprints of light in the dewy grass. This was a new era for cultivation, an age led by the acceptance of emotion, a chi born from the alchemy of tears. And with that, Lin Tao, who was once rejected, became the first to achieve immortality through the silent path, the alchemy of tears. If you were inspired by Lin Tao's journey of transforming weakness into boundless strength, don't let this enlightenment end here. Support this profound journey by hitting the like button, share this vital insight into inner power, and make sure you have subscribed to Storycraft Studio to uncover more life-changing secrets of chi and cultivation.